Hello and welcome to the Angus Report. I'm your host, Clint Mefford, and we're bringing you the latest cattle news and education. This week, we discuss intentional management. We dive into plant averages at packing plants. Registration is now open for the 2019 Angus Convention in Reno, Nevada. And we meet the new American Angus Association CEO, Mark McCully. This is the Angus Report. Running a successful cattle operation starts with intentional management. Doing just what you intend can make the difference between a prosperous farm or ranch and one that struggles. But the factors to consider may not always have to do with cattle or prices. Hugh Aljo, Director of Producer Relations at the Noble Research Institute, says clearly identifying the goals of your operation is the best place to start.
The key message that we want our producers to take home is that we want them to be more intentional in their management. And in order to become more intentional, we've got to proactively manage and have processes in place that we can do so. And we've really got to start with what do we want to achieve, the goals of the operation, and then identify what are those metrics that are going to ensure that we get there. It's like any strategic plan. You've got to have objectives that you're trying to achieve. You got to have strategies that are actually going to help you get there, and then what are the specific tactics? Too often we get caught up in just doing strategies and tactics and don't know what the outcomes are.
Another factor to consider, your number one asset on the farm or ranch.
The employees are the most valuable resource that we have to an operation. Either they make or break the operation. And if they understand what's expected of them, they also are not only more fulfilled, but they're also more valuable to the operation. And we, oftentimes as the managers, are the ones that fail to do our job in order to provide the necessary tools for them to actually be successful.
Preconditioning your cattle is one management strategy that can be easily justified.
As we look at preconditioning, and especially on these what we call our value-added type programs, we're taking a calf crop that we have already invested in through the bulls, the genetics, the herd health, and nutrition, and put it all together with a product that, if we're proud of what we've already produced, it should be more valuable as it goes through the chain. For most operations and most producers, it's not a stretch to take a calf that you've raised on your farm, carried a little bit longer, going through a program, and typically net as much back to that 30 to 45 day phase to the operation as the calf did back to the cow-calf enterprise. And part of that is that we're adding value to the calf. You're taking a balling calf and then turning him into a stalker. That's worth about $6 to $8 a hundredweight. We're moving it from the low in the market. Typically when we wean calves, it's going to be September and October. Moving them to, typically we'd like to recommend in December or after the first of the year. That right there is worth a boost in the market, because the market always rises as we go toward the new year. And with that being the case, that adds another set of values.
The Noble Research Institute offers another management tool for producers to monitor rainfall throughout the year.
One of the little tools that we've developed there at Noble is what I call a water year table, where we begin in October and take our annual rainfall and then look at the long-term average as we accumulate from October to spring. I didn't point out in the program today, but if we look at June, we expect at the end of June to have 70% of our annual production, basically anywhere we go, at least in North America. We should have about 70% of our annual rainfall have accumulated by there. But in order to have a good growing season, we've got to make sure we have enough rainfall to begin the growing season. So where are we? Looking at that variance from normal, if we're ahead or behind, gives a good indication of where we should expect to be, at least during the growing season. The producers that were using the water year table, they called me up really at the beginning of May and said, Hugh, we're tracking about 40% of the actual rainfall we should have already occurred. So I'm thinking about taking that number right there, and I'm going to destock by 20%. Took his old productive cows, sold them as pairs in the spring, knowing that the long-term outlook was for the drought to continue and intensify. So we sold them, dropped it down to about 25% of where he had been before. And then when it got to the fall, when everybody else was selling in a firestorm, he knew that there was genetics out there that was better than he was. He actually bought back another 10% of genetics that added to his program.
Aljo also encourages producers to make pasture management a priority.
The biggest challenge that we have with a lot of the cattle producers is the pastures are kind of an afterthought. The extent that we have grass is the extent that we can have cattle. We typically set a stocking rate, but we forget the carrying capacity, which is the amount of production we have, is variable from year to year, season to season, based on rainfall and how well you've managed the pastures in the past. So if you manage the pastures well, maintain more residual, have more of it grow, because what grows above ground is about what's going to grow below ground. So if you have a lot of growth above ground, you're going to have a lot more roots growing. Below ground, you're going to have more turnover. Above ground, with the residual that's there, we can build organic matter. Organic matter is the key nutrient that we need in addition to the phosphorus and potassium. If we can increase the organic matter, we can increase water holding capacity. Therefore, over time, through management, we can also increase our stocking. For every 1% increase that we can accrue in our soils, we can increase our water holding capacity to what would be effectively 0.7 to 1 inch of rain. So if you only have 1% rainfall, depending on what soil types you've got, at most you've got a limit of how much water you can store. So if you can go from 1 to 3 or 1 to 4 percentage points, you're actually able to capture the rainfall that actually occurs with less of it actually running off.
The bottom line, be proactive instead of reactive.
If you want to become a better manager, you need to be more intentional. And in order to be more intentional, you've got to have not only your processes lined up, but you got to have your goals identified and make sure that you're always going back and checking it. The management plan that we developed this year, as we track it, we make adjustments from season to season so we can refine our efforts, ultimately becomes the template for the management plan for next year. It's just a continual process. If we treat it like a business, that's the way it will look like.
Visit noble.org for information about the Noble Research Institute's Producer Relations Services. Stay tuned. We'll be back with more Angus Report after a break.
Welcome back. Plant averages play a significant role in capturing premiums at the packing plant. Nicole Ursig has more with this week's CAB Market Report.
Today we're talking about an important part of grid marketing, plant averages, with beef cattle specialist Paul Dykstra. Paul, can you explain what a plant average is and why cattlemen should even maybe know about it?
Well, the term plant average is likely foreign to most cattlemen, but simply put, it's a phrase that describes the average of the quality grade mix and the yield grade mix of the cattle that a packer is harvesting across a period of time, perhaps maybe a week for a given month.
What's its relevance to grid marketing?
Well, it's important to consider in terms of grid marketing from the standpoint that a packer is willing to provide incentive or premiums for cattle that are better than average, and likewise discounts for those that fall below. So it's important to describe the average of the plant's harvested cattle for the week in order to place a value on the cattle that are above average and below.
So you mean in order for me to get a premium, I have to beat the plant average that day?
That's correct. For instance, if a packer is harvesting 70% of their cattle at a choice quality grade, then we need to be at least 71% choice in the load lot that we deliver in order to actually start to receive premiums. Similarly, on the yield grade side of the equation, a packer will provide an incentive for groups of cattle that would be below the plant average for instance, yield grade 4s. And then provide a discount above plant average for those that are fatter than the average of their weekly harvest.
So as a cattle producer, how have these plant averages changed over time, and what do I need to be keeping in mind as I'm breeding cattle and marketing my cattle?
Good question. The biggest change has been the evolution of the marbling impacting our quality grade mix, as well as certified Angus beef brand acceptance rates in the last 10 or a dozen years. That progression has been very strong and continual. So it's important that cattlemen realize where we are today in terms of average, because the bar has been elevated, and as a result, the targets that they need to hit are not what they were just a few years ago.
Thanks, Paul. For more information like this, sign up to be a CAB Insider and get a bi-weekly email newsletter written by Paul. Head over to cabcattle.com to sign up.
We check in now on the latest cattle market news with the Cattle Facts Update.
Hello, and welcome to the Cattle Facts Update. I'm Tanner Aheron. The June 1 Cattle on Feed report was recently released, and the USDA numbers were well in line with Cattle Facts and other trade expectations. The report showed that inventory in feedlots with a one-time capacity over 1,000 head was 2% higher than 2018. This is the largest June 1 inventory on record, and the third straight month of new monthly on-feed records. The Northern Plains, consisting of Iowa, Nebraska, and South Dakota, was the only region that reported a year-over-year decline in cattle on feed, as those areas continued to catch up after the harsh winter created dismal pen conditions and slowed placements early on. U.S. cattle on feed inventories are expected to seasonally decline in the coming months, but remain elevated relative to 2018 levels. May marketings were up 1% from a year ago. The strong marketings indicate a front-end fed supply that is current, a major positive for the market. This is further supported when the estimated number of cattle on feed over 150 days on June 1 was only slightly larger than last year. This year-over-year comparison is significantly different than the first 4 months of 2019, when the industry was feeding cattle longer to offset the performance loss from poor weather conditions. After 3 consecutive months with larger than year-ago placements in feedlots, May came in down 3%. Favorable moisture this spring allowed stocker operators to graze cattle longer and fight the market after the futures flush that occurred in late April and into May. This also contributed to the average placement weight being 9 pounds above last year. Still, year-to-date, placements are up 121,000 head, or 1%. As a result, its critical marketings and fed slaughter are steady to above year ago through 2019, and especially in the fall, to keep the industry current. For the Angus Report and Cattle Facts, I'm Tanner Ahearn.
To learn more about Cattle Facts, your leading source for beef industry market information, visit cattlefacts.com.
Next on the Angus Report, we preview the 2019 Angus Convention. Stay with us.
Welcome back. The 2019 National Angus Convention and Trade Show is set for November 2nd through the 4th in Reno, Nevada. Caitlin Brandt, events coordinator at the association, describes what attendees can look forward to this year in Reno.
One of the most exciting aspects of the Angus Convention is the trade show. That's one of the top 5 reasons that attendees come to the convention is for the trade show. And I will say that when you get there, it's a little bit overwhelming because there's businesses and companies from all across the country, and then you also get to network with those businessmen and also the producers. We have businesses and operations from equipment dealers to animal health products to certified Angus beef, and then the association also has a large booth in the middle of the trade show floor. We do have staff available that during the trade show hours you can visit with them one-on-one, get all your questions answered, and even from the products and services that the association has to offer. So Friday of the Angus Convention is kind of the pre-Angus Convention day. It starts right out first thing in the morning with the National Angus Tour heading southwest of Reno to Bentley Ranch, where we will visit their commercial cow-calf operation along with their distillery and their own meat locker. And then that afternoon, if you're not really interested in the tour, there is an opportunity to get BQA certified with NCBA representatives. On Saturday is full of education sponsored by Neogen, starting first with the Genetic Symposium keynote speakers in the morning, and then that afternoon is more of the hands-on innovation workshops throughout both in the livestock demo area and in the classroom. And this year we also have something unique. We have the Learning Lounge, which is located in the trade show, so that there will be topics, whether it's association topics or industry relevant topics, that's more geared towards producers to come and learn and listen. On Sunday is the Angus University workshops, and that covers a wider range of topics from feeder calves to cows and heifers to the Angus bull. There will be different topics throughout the afternoon, different speakers, and that way producers are allowed to kind of make the best of their time and their decision, choosing those workshops that best fit what they want to learn about. And then we wrap up on Sunday with Flatland Cavalry, the concert there at the Convention Center. If you are a delegate this year, I would highly recommend and encourage you to attend the convention prior to just the convention of delegates, so that you take in all that the convention has to offer, the education, the networking, and then also participating in the selection of the next board members. This year, we're really trying to focus on the next generation of cattlemen. So if you are 21 and under, it is at no cost to attend the Angus Convention in Reno. We're just trying to focus on bringing the next generation up so that they are ready to learn and understand everything that the American Angus Association has to offer moving forward in their career. In order to register for the Angus Convention, first go to angusconvention.com. And then we've streamlined the process this year so it's more simple and easier than ever to register for the Angus Convention. You can go in there, you select the hotel you want, the room rate you want, the dates you're checking in, and then once you're done, you'll get a confirmation email in your inbox. If there are questions, call the association and there are staff available to help walk you through that process step by step.
Visit angusconvention.com to register for the event or to find more information about reserving a booth in the trade show. Up next, we meet the new CEO of the American Angus Association. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the Angus Report. He started as a stock show kid in Central Illinois and has spent the last 19 years with the world's leading branded beef program, Certified Angus Beef. He is now at the helm of the single largest beef breed association in the world. We sat down with McCully to learn a little bit more about the new CEO of the American Angus Association.
I was actually born in Central Illinois, a small family farming operation. We had row crops, corn, beans, and some cattle on the side, and really fell in love with the registered cattle and grew up 4-H and FFA, showing cattle, fell in love with the livestock judging, and that took me on through college. Had the opportunity to be on collegiate livestock judging teams, which probably was my first big exposure to the cattle industry, bigger than outside a few county or even a state area. And from there, went on into graduate school, had the chance to coach a livestock judging team and work with some great industry leaders in that role. Had the opportunity after that to work for a livestock marketing cooperative at Southern States Cooperative, and then later to Certified Angus Beef. I started at Certified Angus Beef in 2000 and started there as director of packing and had the opportunity to work with all of our licensed packing companies at the time, but really being able to work day to day with the packers, all the things that they go through to make sure that the cattle are harvested, graded, and the products get where they need to get to. From there, I actually spent a couple years working on our food service, retail, international side in our business development. So now got to work kind of hand in hand at the food service and retail businesses and the partners that we have at Certified Angus Beef. After that, I transitioned back into more of a supply development, working more on the production side, and had been there until just recently, and had responsibilities for our packing and our cattle, all our cattleman-facing efforts that we put together. And again, a lot of it had to do with how do we grow more supply to meet the demand that we're growing in at food service and retail, both globally and internationally. I think my time at Certified Angus Beef was valuable on a lot of fronts, but maybe the biggest thing it did for me was just simply broaden my perspective. I come from a live cattle background, the seed stock business. I'd had some experience on the commercial side of things, on the feeder calf marketing side of things, had some feed yard experience. But my years at Certified Angus Beef allowed me to really understand the beef business, the business beyond. I understood how cattle went into the packing plant, and I understood I could walk into a grocery store and see a package of meat. The gap between that is what I learned at Certified Angus Beef that I found invaluable. I feel like I've been offered all these incredible opportunities in my past. I'm an old show kid and ran around the country showing cattle and clipping cattle, and I love that. At one point I thought I could do that for the rest of my life, and that probably wasn't, my knees said that probably wasn't going to happen. No, I've been in corporate offices with large food service and retail chains and packing offices, and yet maybe one of my favorite things to do is just go get in the truck and drive around and look at cows. And so I'm pretty comfortable in all those different settings. I enjoy all of those settings. I've always said maybe one of my big passions is on any given day to be able to see the entire supply chain. from seed stock all the way to the chef and the consumer and everybody in between. I find that invigorating. I find that exciting. I think there's so many things to learn about this dynamic business that we're in. Well, the role here as Chief Executive Officer is truly an iconic role in the cattle industry. It's as someone that comes up from a registered seed stock background, you know, the idea of being at a breed association in a leadership role is somewhat of a dream job as you think about it growing up and where you aspire to be. I've had just some wonderful exposure over the years being at Certified Angus Beef to the team, the bigger team of Angus, all the teams here in St. Joe and the regional managers, and honestly the idea of being able to focus 100% on the cattle side of the business was something that was really, really appealing. Yeah, I think as breed associations look to the future of how do they ultimately grow demand for registered Angus seed stock, I believe that's their charge. I think breed associations have a huge role in the future of the cattle industry. Obviously times are changing and associations will need to evolve and adapt to that change as well. But I think it ultimately comes down to we've got to make sure the cattle are the best cattle that can meet the needs of both our seed stock and our commercial breeders. And so obviously we look at the genetic selection tools, the value of the pedigree, the value of that registration paper that it needs to become, and make sure it maintains that significant relevance to both the seed stock and the commercial cattlemen out there. I think we just continue to look at the services that we provide our members to make sure that we understand the needs that they have, the challenges that they have in their business, and make sure they're always finding value in their membership and their association with the Angus breed. I think the key to our success is to be able to celebrate and respect and recognize our traditions, our heritage, the time-honored traditions that have served our members and the breed and the cattle industry and the association so well. I think we need to keep those and understand those and reflect upon those, and then look to the future and be able to be innovative, to be able to look at change, be able to look into the future and find the things that we need to be incorporating and today to be best prepared for tomorrow. And I think striking that balance is something that I'm going to work awfully hard at to again, reflect upon our heritage, respect our heritage and where we've been, and at the same time, make sure we're positioned for where we need to be in the future.
And that's a wrap for this week's Angus Report. Tune in next week for industry-leading news and education, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Angus TV, for more highlights from the association. We'll see you next week.